Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney. That's Nick Zararis. And Nick, the four nations, I don't know if you've heard this, are facing off, and the Americans are freeing their bird. I don't know if you are. I don't know if you've heard or if you've seen what's going on lately, but they are indeed facing off.
I didn't know that. That's the first I'm hearing about this. I mean, look, it's worked out perfectly for the NHL in every conceivable fashion. You know, they did an incredible TV number Saturday night last week, which is something the NHL has really kind of struggled with since going from where they were on NBCSN to TNT and ABC/ESPN. Obviously a step in the right direction, but the numbers haven't been great. You know, the Winter Classic had bad ratings this year. They've had really rough TV schedule. And look, some of that is not the NHL's fault. You know, you make this schedule over the summer. You don't know who is going to be good when the season actually happens. You know, I'm sure the NHL would love to not have the Rangers playing the Penguins at 3:30 this upcoming Sunday, because that game, though both of these teams are still in playoff contention, that's not exactly a needle mover. That's not going to excite people if they're flipping through the channels. But New York's a big market. New York always does well on TV whenever the Rangers do play on ESPN.
The hope is there's just a lot of fights, I guess, in that game.
Yes.
From Bettman's point of view, it's still a rivalry, even if both teams are not very good. Let's just say. So I guess the thought process is okay. Well, it's Crosby, it's Shesterkin. Have at it.
Is it Shesterkin though?
Maybe Matt Rempe is going to be there, so maybe Rempe fights somebody. I don't. Who knows?
So as far as the four nations, aside from the silliness about like the roster stuff, which is very funny, like the NHL, which is very lenient in the enforcement of some rules like boarding, head contact, slashing, tripping, we can't have Thomas Harley skate as an eighth defenseman because that would violate the rules that we entirely made up 6 months ago.
Right.
I will never not commend the NHL's commitment to being weird. Like the video of Thomas Harley standing in the tunnel, peeking around the corner, trying to watch practice was objectively hilarious. Objectively, like, what do you mean? He can't sit on the bench? That's a violation of the rules if he were to watch practice from the bench as opposed to down the tunnel.
Also, it's already a best on best, man. Like why?
It's silly to me. Like, I know for the Olympics, they get bigger rosters than they did for this, but like, it's very silly that there wasn't like a formalized, okay, every team you can have X number of reserves, 4 or 5 guys that if you have an injury, you make the call, whatever. Like Quinn Hughes pulling himself out 2 weeks ago, and then Quinn Hughes standing up from the wheelchair, pulling the blanket off, revealing he was never in a cast to begin with and just didn't want to play the first 2 games and wanted to spend a week in the tropics somewhere. I respect it. I respect the move. We'll see. I am worried about the safety of Jake Sanderson, who has purportedly been given every disease under the sun, who has been threatened with bodily harm to get Quinn Hughes in the lineup.
Suddenly has a lower body injury that's going to magically heal.
He's going to get
Friday.
A hangnail, and that hangnail is going to get a staph infection, and he's going to not be able to play on Thursday. But we'll see. But objectively, this is what we wanted. We got a best-on-best tournament as best as the geopolitical conditions will allow. Right now, it is not conducive to inviting Russia to this, so they can't be in it. So for what it is, that's fine. We are getting quality hockey. And the biggest gripe that you got from, frankly, just outright stupid people was, they're not going to try. It's not the Olympics. These guys want to be on the Olympic team next year. This is effectively tryouts for the Olympic team next year. And you saw it from the first game, the Canada game last week. They came out on, what was that, Wednesday or Thursday night, whatever it was, and they played very hard, and they came out of the gate flying. And since then, we have been treated to just genuinely visually appealing hockey, which is something that is refreshing and nice as people who've been subjected to watching the Rangers for so much this year. It's great watching defensemen exit the zone in one pass in stride, hitting a forward in stride on the tape who receives the pass cleanly, keeps their head up skating the entire way, and carries the puck into the offensive zone. This is high-level hockey at its best.
We got to go back to watching Ryan Lindgren after this, Nick. I don't know if you know that, but like after we were watching incredible hockey, incredible defensemen who are confident with the puck, that knows how to pass through a seam, that can take a shot that's actually going to hit the net every now and again. And we have to go from this to watching Ryan Lindgren play hockey again, which
it's not great.
No, not ideal.
It's like when, the years the Rangers would miss the year they missed the playoffs, 18, 19, and 20, you went from watching the Rangers to the first round of the playoffs, and it was like watching a different sport. We always make that joke that it feels like the Rangers are playing a different sport than some of these teams, but this is effectively an entirely different planet. And one of the things that's great about best on best hockey is we get to dispel stupid notions like you couldn't win with a team of all skill, because Team USA has JT Miller effectively playing in a fourth line role. He's playing 12 minutes, he's killing penalties. Whereas, in the real world, he's playing 22 minutes a night as the Rangers' most important forward. This is what it looks like when you have full on commitment and you have guys playing very, very specialized roles. You could extend that same thing to Trocheck, same thing to Dylan Larkin, who's been very, very good in this tournament so far. Somebody who's used his skating to create some space, who is really one of their more important players in the win against Canada last week. And I've really liked what the Americans have done as far as finding the lineup as the game goes along. That first game, they started out with with their line combinations, and they weren't getting enough going. And it took a period and a half for Mike Sullivan to look around and say, all right, we got to do better than this. And eventually got the Kachucks with Eichel. They kept Austin with Jack Hughes, which I really like the way they play together. I want to talk about that more, but they've been very impressive. I wish we could have gotten more, frankly. Like, I liked what I saw from Erik Karlsson on Sweden. I thought he had a really nice few games. I would have liked to have seen Finland with Miro Heiskanen, which is unfortunate he's not playing in this tournament. But I've been very entertained, and anybody who, at this point, who is still maintaining the illusion of this is a waste of time or stupid, just doesn't want to admit they're wrong. This is awesome. This is what it's all about.
This is great. And like, for what it's worth, yeah, the All-Star game is completely irrelevant. They should do this more. Like, this is great. This is, and John Cooper said it. I think, some other coaches have said this. Like, this has done really good things for the sport of hockey. People are like, the teams and players are.
People is talking about hockey who's never talked about hockey before.
Like ESP, like Get Up is talking about the tourney. Like, people that are completely never have watched hockey or not involved in hockey at all, pretend doesn't exist, people are suddenly talking about this, four nations facing off, and they're facing off against four nations tournament. And it's like, this is great. Like, think about all the missteps the NHL has done over the years.
Yes, 10 years since they went to the Olympics.
The NHL has done a lot of baffling decisions, let's just say, over the course of, of a few decades that have really stunted the growth of this sport. This is a slam dunk home run all day, every day. I mean, the All-Star game is a weekend where nobody cares. The shootouts are fun because of the props and like the silly things. But other than that, no one's really paying attention to the All-Star weekend. The same thing's going on in the NBA, where they're having a crisis right now because all the players don't care. They don't want to participate in the dunk contest or the 3-point contest, or they don't want to care in the All-Star game, and no one wants to watch it as a result. And they're facing an issue, like a massive issue right now. Whereas the NHL has figured out, okay, All-Star game, no one cares, but the players suddenly care a lot if you put their country on their jersey, which is something that you cannot do in the NBA because it would be.
They've tried that at various points where they've done the world versus North America.
Yeah,
it just doesn't have the same feel.
It's a little bit different because the world team is not a unifier.
Yeah,
the same way Team Canada hockey is. Same way, even Team Sweden, Team Finland. Like, if you were to make, like, let's just say you had a 5 nations face off, right? And you'd have the 4 that are currently still playing, and you'd have a quote unquote world with, like, Pasternak and Ovechkin and all those guys. That would be a fun team to watch, but they wouldn't have the same unity as a team that, like Team Canada, Team USA, where it's all the same background, all the same country. Patriotism is a big unifier for whether people like it or not. It's a really big, especially in sports.
I don't know if you're a history buff or not. But.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, there's 1 or 2 maybe examples where you can point to that with that being the case. But it is a formula that the NHL has figured out, and it has really done a great job. Again, when you have people that have never watched a hockey game, that have never talked about hockey, that have never given hockey the time of day at all, for them to now suddenly not only be talking about it, but be, new fans of the sport, that is exactly what this kind of event is supposed to be. And the fact that not only the players are buying in, but the fans are into it, that, you're getting new people into it. Like, this is exactly what this is for. So I applaud Bettman. I applaud the NHL for coming up with this, because this has been awesome.
It's the same exact phenomena we watched over the summer with the Olympics, where, you talk about the women's rugby team, you talk about pommel horse guy, those guys who had those niche moments where I don't remember either of their names, but I remember them. I follow them on Instagram. I made the comparison of like the end of summer camp where you get everyone's information to check in on them a few months later. Like, you remember that now. And one thing to add on to that I think is an important component of this is an appetizer for the Olympics, and the fine line you have to walk now. You can't beat this to death. This does not work if you do this every year. This,
Yep.
frankly, might not work if you do this every other year. I think you need to get this on the Copa America / Euro cycle, where it's a World Cup every 4 years. We're talking about soccer, which would be the Olympics in our case. And then every second year, so every second even year, we do this as kind of a precursor / tryout / audition, whatever you want to call it. So that way, and I do think there is a benefit to Canada bringing some of the younger guys like Harley, like Seth Jarvis along. I wish Team USA could have found a way to sneak someone younger like a Luke Hughes into this group. Jake Sanderson does fit that bill, so that makes sense. But that's
Well,
something,
he's getting the phantom injury, so you know
in
what?
theory, we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
see. As far as that's something that's important when we're talking about, passing down institutional knowledge and building your game and your identity, because in an ideal world, these federations play slightly different styles because their players are used to different things, but you want to have that where these young guys are getting wisdom passed down to them from their old guys, so that when the time comes around where, Austin Matthews and Jack Eichel are the old guys on this team, they're going to be the ones who are passing that down to whatever that next wave is. And there's a greater conversation to be had. There's been a lot of discourse about what's happened to Canada in certain aspects, especially goaltending. There's been certain conversation about what went right for Team USA, between 2017 and 2020, where they produced so many important players for them in this tournament, where you talk about Jack Hughes, you talk about Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, Adam Fox, something dramatically different happened in that window versus what's happened in the rest of time, which has been Canada producing the lion's share of players. And, things ebb and flow. It could just be an outlier, greatest generation type deal, which this is undoubtedly the greatest collection of American hockey players
Oh,
ever on
yeah,
a team. And
yeah.
that they don't even have Quinn Hughes. And I
Yeah.
still think,
And also, by the way, they don't have, of course, Rangers legend Jacob Trouba. They don't have Captain America, if you will, to lead the charge either. So, that's another piece of the puzzle here.
hey man, there was a 1 second part of my brain that was like, is Bill Guerin that stupid? Is Bill Guerin going to bring Jacob Trouba to this purely to fight again on Thursday? Because look, and I think it's very funny that Brandon Hagel said it, and like I said this 2 years ago, and Athena CU said this about Trouba, but it's like, if this is all you got to like get fired up, you weren't fired up to begin with.
Right.
You needed 3 fights, and look, there's no better encapsulation of the Rangers trading for JT Miller than him punching himself in the face and knocking his own helmet off. Because like, he's trying his ass off. He is
Yeah.
trying to do the right thing. But like, this is really kind of unnecessary, and like, we appreciate the effort, but like,
Right.
you're trying too much. You're not really accomplishing a whole lot. It's great you're trying. You're fighting a guy that's like 20 pounds heavier than you, 2 inches taller than you. It's great. We love the effort. The commitment is great. But like, is this really helping us win? Like, that's really, there's no better
Yeah.
encapsulation of JT Miller.
That's a moment that like nobody would have known about 50 years ago.
No, because there wouldn't
when
have been a second camera angle.
Yeah, there wouldn't have been a second camera. The writers wouldn't have brought it up, and that moment would have been lost to time.
Yeah.
But now, it's a really good, kind of like you said, a good snapshot of what the Rangers were doing. It's like, wait, you're telling me that this is the guy that you brought in, and he's punching himself?
He was
Like,
trying. I give him credit. He
I know.
tried. He tried.
Yeah.
Colton Parayko's got 20 pounds on him. He's 2 inches taller than him, and he tried. And look, that's the cool thing about best on best. You know, we talked about this over the summer when we were talking about Team USA. Like, they brought Devin Booker to just be a clamps perimeter defender, and like he was all about it. He's like, I want to play with KD and LeBron. I'm going to play the best defense of my life, and you're seeing that. You know, I know there's been a lot of maligning of Jack Hughes so far through this tournament because of his size. He gets knocked off the puck easy. Him and Austin Matthews did a great job on McDavid last Saturday.
I'm so sick and tired of people saying size when talking about someone's like skill or not skill. Please, like
That's part of it, yes, but that's not the
that doesn't tell me
yeah.
anything. Like, okay, Jack Hughes is smaller than he could be, I guess, but like that if that doesn't tell me anything. Okay,
He
so he's a little bit easier to knock off the puck because he's not 6'8". Okay, but he's so fast and he's so skilled that most of the time it doesn't matter. It just continues to baffle me because this happens in not just professional hockey media, from fans as well. Every single day we hear this. Oh, this guy is too small. Oh, it's like please just pick a delusion. Just pick one, because there's so many different ones in hockey that don't make any sense. Oh, this guy is a gritty sandpaper guy who is big and tough. This guy is too small, gets knocked off the puck. None of these things mean anything. If you are like you could be 5'2" for all I care. If you are if you are so skilled that the puck ends up in the opponent's net more often than not, and you are creating scoring opportunities, and you're a net positive to the team on the ice when it matters, what difference does it make how tall you are? That doesn't I understand how size a little bit matters when you're on the ice, especially if you're like a defenseman, when you need that bigger stick to block the passing lanes, but especially if you're a forward, like, okay, so you're a little bit shorter than other people. Who cares?
and to his and look, we talk about this all the time that like defense is more than just blocking shots and throwing checks. And like
Yeah.
Hughes' game on Saturday against McDavid was a really good example of that, where he's using his speed to take away gaps, to force the Canadians through the middle of the ice. And to their credit, the Americans played a really good defensive game that forced Canada to the outside. And America's playing good defense when you got the Pierre LeBruns of the world saying too much east-west about a fucking Canadian all-star team. Imagine telling Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon, hey man, too much east-west, take it to the net. Those are the two best hockey players on the planet Earth. And you have people legitimately saying, well, they're not going to the middle of the game because it's not there. They can't go there because America clamped down the middle and said, we'll give you whatever you want from the outside. It's why Canada had a little more possession, a few more scoring chances. And to complement that, you have Hellebuyck in there to take away the big lanes, who's been great. As personally, as someone who's always liked Hellebuyck, it's nice that he's having a good tournament in an environment where he's been kind of labeled as, a bit of a underperformer in big spots, hasn't always been great in the playoffs for the Jets, but very happy about that. But when you've got full-throated defensive commitment from guys like Hughes, from guys like Austin Matthews, and then Eichel, who's probably been their best forward in this tournament so
He's been
far,
great.
he's taken such a dramatic step defensively in the last 2 years, where you can give Bruce Cassidy some credit for that, but some of that is just getting older and having a better understanding of what you need to do. Eichel looks every bit the part, and it's not as good as what the Canadians can run out there, where if they split them up, they can run McDavid, McKinnon point down the middle. But you got to feel pretty good about what the Americans are throwing out there down the middle. And
Of course.
that's always been really the differentiation point between these two federations when they've met in international play. Last Saturday was the anniversary of the TJ Oshie game, the 8-round shootout against the Russians in Sochi.
Not the Rangers. The USA didn't medal in that.
No, they didn't. They didn't make the medal round. They lost the bronze medal game in that
medal,
tournament. Yeah. And the crazy thing about that was after the goal goes in, everyone storms out on the ice, and you're looking at the names and you see, Ryan Kessler. Ryan Kessler would make this team. Even prime Ryan Kessler probably wouldn't make this team over what Trocheck is. You saw Paul Stastny. He wouldn't make this team over any of the centers. Maybe Brock Nelson if you want to be pedantic, but the night and day evolution, especially when we're talking about the high end talent.
Oh yeah.
And that's why America would do the dumb stuff like bringing Justin Abdelkader and Brandon Dubinsky, because they would say, well, we got to grind them into a pulp. We got to play dump and chase. And, Sid just breaks out clean every single time against you. And that's really the difference now. Team USA has the elite talent to say, okay, if you want to go up and down, back and forth, we can do that. And I think it's a really strong endorsement of this group and their makeup that they saw that game, and it was a coin flip game. And I know there are a lot of Canadians out there who are very perplexed, and frankly, I am too, why they're sticking with Binnington for whatever reason. But like, I don't think Binnington was the reason they lost last Saturday. Did he give up a stinker?
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was a coin flip game. It's a coin
bad.
flip. It's a 1-goal game.
Yeah.
It is a coin flip game.
That first goal was bad.
And you're a team that has Sid Connor, and Nate Mack, and you couldn't score on the power play, which was in that kill really gave between the fights and the penalty kill, that really kind of got America's feet under them and got them in this game. And that was really my big question, was how would the players play in this environment? Would it kind of feel like an early part of a playoff game where both teams very tentative, not really making pushes? And instead, from the very jump, that first game, the Canada versus Sweden game, that was up and down, back and forth right off the rip. Canada scored 30 seconds into that game, where they went Connor to Sid to Nate Mack on the one-timer, and right from the get-go. And it's been really up and down. It's been really high tempo. But America looks like they belong here, which is not something I've ever been able to say before in international hockey.
It's been great. This Team USA is one of, if not the best, put together top to bottom rosters that this program has ever seen before, and it's great. Like, it just really shows how far USA hockey has come. Like, even like you said, like Ryan Kessler and Paul Stastny, those are good players. Don't get me wrong.
Those are third liners, fourth liners on this team.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, but they're not the high. They're not at the top of the top. Then they wouldn't play top 6 minutes in on today's team, and that just really goes to show, like, Eichel and Hughes and Matthews and all these guys. They've really not only elevated USA hockey, but think of it like, we got to think of the long term here. There's 8-year-old kids watching this team that are going, I want to be just like him. I want to be just like Connor Hellebuyck. I want to be just like, Quinn Hughes was coming here, and hopefully will play. Like, I want to be like these guys. I want to put in the effort. I want to go, and play hockey for a living. Like, this is the best Team USA probably in the program's history, and it's not only influencing the current sphere and the current talking points about the sport, but it's also going to really help the long-term future of not just hockey as a whole, but also from a micro standpoint, the future of Team USA. It's looking good, and it's only going to get better if this continues.
That was one of the really interesting things. The Athletic did a really long feature about the goaltending gap between America and Canada. And there's no one answer as to why America's kind of prevailed at that position in particular. But some of it is just simply opportunity, that a lot of guys in Canada, you want to be a goalie, that's it. You don't get to try other positions. And by the time guys get to major junior hockey, they're already kind of burnt out because they've played 8 years of goalie. And the professionalization of the sport in Canada in particular has really damaged the development cycles of guys. Some of it is just simply cost. It's really expensive to play hockey. It's even more expensive to be a goalie. Some of that you can underwrite, and it's a little bit easier when you can do things like grant money and scholarships for kids down here to get opportunities. But
yeah,
and some things are working out. The USA hockey program looked around and said, we need to do something different. And the development program has been a resounding success. This team is littered with national development team graduates, the Hughes brothers, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Adam Fox, and even guys who aren't on this team that pass through the development team program. It is undoubtedly working. And the system, it has its flaws. There are guys who slip. There are always going to be guys who slip through the cracks. There are questions about how responsible it is to, move 16-year-olds away from their parents and dropping them in dorms adjacent to a college campus.
That's what Canadian Too.
Again, that's the same. It's
Yeah.
the same. It's the same general
They
problem.
have a billet family, and
Yeah,
like
same.
it's the same process.
It's the same
It's
process. There
yeah,
are questions about, how responsible it is and the large scale of that, I'm saying, but like it is fundamentally producing better hockey players, especially on the high end, which has always been the biggest gap. You go and look at the roster from 2014 and like, yeah, Patrick Kane is undoubtedly one of the 5 best players of his era. That was the only elite player on that USA team. If you wanted to argue Ryan Suter maybe as the best defensive defenseman in the NHL at that point, but that Canadian team, it was a lot better than that. That
yep.
Canadian team was a lot better than that down the middle. 2 Hall of Famers in net between 3, excuse me. Because I actually no, Brodeur wasn't on that team, but Luongo and Price, 2 Hall of Fame goalies.
Right.
And they were at the
Oh, the
point.
team Canada would kill for just one right now.
I mean, look, none of the guys they have are particularly inspiring. If you held a gun to my head, I'd probably tell you to start Aiden Hill, but I wouldn't feel great about that.
No, yeah, it's
None of those guys. Look, if you wanted to invite Logan Thompson as one of the 3, he's been the best in the regular season so far this year. He's also never really played in a high stakes, high leverage environment to this degree, which would be a lot to ask a guy cold, but they have questions, and some of it is injuries. They're missing a few really important pieces. Makar's been sick. There's apparently a bad flu going around that's been knocking guys out on all of these teams. Makar, Zibanejad missed the last game for Sweden. He sat out. Austin Matthews, I believe, was sitting out with that. So it's a really fortunate line of circumstances that things have worked out. We made the joke a few weeks ago that it'd be very fitting. The NHL did everything in their power to set up a USA-Canada final on American soil, and to get Finland-Sweden would almost be poetic for what the NHL typically gets whenever it does things like this. But
sure.
things have worked out very well for them. They are getting the mainstream attention from this that they wanted. America winning helps. Anytime you get the nationality poll, it's just like the Olympics. And most importantly, you're setting this up for the Olympics, where a lot of these guys are going to have familiarity from playing with each other. And you're going to be able to say, well, we don't want to bring these guys. We want to bring these guys instead. And the other factor to consider, which is something I forgot about, is next year in Italy, we'll be playing on the Olympic ice, which is bigger. And we can bring, Jake Sanderson and Luke Hughes and just put a rocket ship on the defense effectively and say, everybody's fast and can skate well, and good luck trying to get the puck from us. And we've been doing this almost 30 minutes now. We haven't mentioned how good Jacob Slavin's been in this tournament, where he's been Clamps McGee out there. You cannot get around.
Can I have that on a t-shirt?
Clamps McGee is not an original nickname. I don't know where that originated from. I don't know if that's a friend group joke or if that's just something that's out there, but he's been remarkable. And we can pivot this conversation to the Rangers, because ultimately this is.
By the way, really quick before we go to the Rangers, the guy that has the sweatshirt that was like, I just hope the 4 nations have fun. I mean, you can't make better merch than that. Like this, whoever printed that, I mean, take the rest of the day off, man. You've earned it.
It's a good idea. All right, pivoting to the Rangers. I don't like to read too much into these games as far as extrapolating outwards. I thought Zibanejad got better the more games he played. He also didn't play their last game. I thought he looked really, really bad against Canada. But again, it's Canada. I can accept that he's a bit out of his depth playing 20 minutes against Sid, McKinnon, McDavid.
Which, by the way,
crazy, he led their forwards in minutes in the first game. Crazy.
By the way, and I wanna highlight this here, because you mentioned this. Supposedly, Mika Zibanejad, allegedly, according to some people, is the Rangers' best center, and he is their number 1 center.
He's their best right wing.
Well, he is. Well, let's put that aside for a second. He is allegedly the Rangers' best center, and he continues to play top line minutes because allegedly he's really good at defending the best talent from the other team. Right? That's the argument. He's a supposedly a really good 2-way player. So why didn't he do that against Canada?
Hey, man, the management of Sweden's roster was very weird throughout this tournament.
I would agree.
Why'd they sit Ekholm? Like, Ekholm's probably their best defensive. And look, I like Rasmus Andersson. I think Rasmus Andersson is very good. Ekholm's a better defensive defenseman.
I would agree.
Why is Pettersson only playing 10 minutes a game? You know, why are you playing your best center the least? Why is Jonas Brodin getting more minutes than Rasmus Dahlin? You know, very weird management of their lineup throughout their games. And
well, they're not playing in the final, so I guess that, you know, that checks out.
Yeah, the goaltending situation, some of that's injury related. You know, you probably would have started Markstrom overall. You know, Ullmark was sick. That's why he didn't play.
Yeah.
Ersson was fine for them yesterday. I felt like he was reasonably good in their game as much as he could be. But overall, thinking about this from a Rangers perspective, you know, they've got only 28, 29 regular season games left. I can't imagine much being generated out of this tournament as far as momentum or energy. You know, Trocheck's been fine. It was nice. Kreider scored a goal. Fox has largely been fine. I haven't really had any gripes with his game.
I got a text from somebody that covers a Canadian team with like, Kreider with like the eyes emoji, and I'm like, yeah, your team should trade for him. And then he goes, nice try. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's good that he scored, but you know, it doesn't really tell you anything.
No. It's hard because now you're going to have those conversations. You know, we've been talking about, well, the deadline. Deadline's 3 weeks from now. It's March 7th. It's on a Friday, as it has been for a while now. And we got some awkward conversations to be had about what really matters. What are we doing here? What's the point of all of this? And some people are suggesting ludicrous things, you know, God bless them, but Alexi Lafreniere right now is better than Trevor Zegras has ever been in the NHL. And
what's funnier? Nick, what's funnier? Brooks suggesting that,
or denying
that he said it? Yeah, because he wrote it in his story and then quote tweeted a graphic saying that's not what he wrote. Brother, it's in the article. There's screenshots. There's proof.
He's being very, 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 very pedantic, and he's being a stickler because he said I would consider it and not say I would do it. But brother,
I mean, come on, man.
Especially considering all of his work is behind a paywall now, and you know that you are trying to convince people to subscribe to a premium service. At a certain point, you know, you're just doing bait. I am one of the last surviving people with Trevor Zegras stock. I might be the only person left in the entire NHL community who has any Trevor Zegras stock. You know, it's like Enron stock. It's not worth a whole lot.
They're back though, so you know what? If Enron's back, then so can Trevor Zegras. What a sentence! If Enron is back, then Trevor Zegras can be back too. I mean, by the way, no one has ever said that before, and nobody will ever say that again. This is the one and only time that string of words will ever be said together. And it's right here on Liberty Blue. This is why you listen.
Look, I think Zegras can be a functional NHL player, and above average one at that. He's exactly what everyone who hates the state of the Rangers right now claims they don't want. It's especially funny that Larry, who keeps calling the Rangers the softest team he's ever seen, just suggesting Trevor Zegras is materially more physical than Alexi Lafreniere. And look, the Rangers have undoubtedly disappointed this year. That extends from the best player on this team to the worst player on this team. Shifting deck chairs on the Titanic, you know, if you want to argue, hey, let's get rid of Lafreniere's contract before it kicks in to have even more flexibility, that's great. What's the point of bringing Trevor Zegras into this team? What does Trevor Zegras bring materially that they don't already have? And look, I think Zegras can be a good player. I think he is as clear-cut a change of scenery candidate as exists in the entire NHL, where if you get him on a team that's competitive, he might actually give a shit. And look, that's not a great ringing endorsement of him as a player, but it's not immaterial. You know, you think about where Dylan Strome was in his NHL career 3 years ago, couldn't get in on the Blackhawks, was playing third line center minutes on the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
And the Capitals were like, sure, we'll give you 1 year, $2 million if you want to try and stay in the NHL. And he's been great ever since. And I think that's probably the type of change of scenery Trevor Zegras needs. As far as the Rangers look, we will know very quickly what the plan is here based on if they sell or not. If they trade Ryan Lindgren, Jimmy Vesey,
I would have to think they are trading Ryan Lindgren. Again, we talked about this before, but the Rangers not giving Lindgren anything more than a 1-year extension last season. The fact that have to think that Drury sees the problems with Lindgren, and a lot of Lindgren continuing to play with Fox, is because Laviolette claims the pairs are set in stone, as opposed to anything actually related to how he plays the game, which is a whole different problem in and of itself. But whatever. At this, right now, that's not the point of the conversation. Like, if the Rangers really liked Ryan Lindgren, then whatever they had, I think, is gone, because this was essentially a prove it deal for him. This was okay, we like you because you're heart and soul and all these, all this other sweet nothings that we've heard about Ryan Lindgren over the years, but we're not committed to you. We're going to give you one last chance to show us that you are a top 4 NHL defenseman. And he's turned that around into being one of the worst defensemen in the entire NHL this year. So based off of that, and for as much as Drury likes him, and I understand that, he's watching the same player that we are.
Is he though?
I
is he though?
I would.
And he politicked Vincent Trocheck and Chris Kreider onto Team USA over Tage Thompson and Cole Caulfield.
Yeah, listen, I'm not saying he's a perfect man. I am saying that he too has eyes that he uses sometimes to watch his team play the games. And based off of what Ryan Lindgren has done and the trajectory of this team, in that what Drury has done to this point this season, of trading, of waiving Gaudreau, of trading Trouba, of trading Kakko, like, he's not afraid of trading away players in the locker room that the team likes. And I know that everybody in the locker room loves Ryan Lindgren, but he's not afraid of doing that, and I would be very surprised if Ryan Lindgren past the deadline is still a Ranger.
See, the one counterpoint to that is, unfortunately, they did trade for JT Miller, and they did give Igor an 8-year extension. And both of those tell me this general manager thinks that, A, they can make the playoffs this year, which is why they did the Miller trade now as opposed to in the summer. And B, it tells me that even if they don't make the playoffs this year, the goal is to be a contender by as soon as next season. And what does that mean as far as the roster itself? Well, I don't know if you've watched the Rangers lately, Andrew, but they probably need 3 new defensemen.
Well, not lately. They haven't played in 10 days.
They need 3 new defensemen. They need at least 1 top 6 forward. They need at least 1 bottom 6 forward. They probably need a backup goalie, assuming Jonathan Quick retires. They need 5 new players, 2 of them impactful, 1 top 4 defenseman at least, and 1 top 6 forward. And look, if you want to say Zibanejad's a winger now, and they're going to run with some permutation of Kreider, Zibanejad, Miller, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Panarin as the top 6, sure, okay. Then they still need 2 bottom 6 wingers. And look, if you think it's Will Cooley and whomstever, that's great and all, but we can call a spade a spade. This team ain't winning anything.
No.
This team, even next year, like, there is no silver bullet fix to this. And I feel like I am insane when I see people talking about the playoffs. Like, it matters.
Like, playoffs.
This, like, even if they make the playoffs this year, you're going to feel good about a team that's going to play Vakanainen, Borgen, and Lindgren against Toronto, Florida, or the Devils, or Carolina, or Washington. Look at the Rangers' record against the teams that they would have to play in the first round this year. Look at the Rangers' record against good teams this year, other than the Stars, who they inexplicably beat every year for some reason.
Except for that one time they had a 3-0 lead against the Stars, and then they blew it. But
that's true. That's true. I forgot about that one.
I'm like, both of us are crazy. Like, like, we're just like, these are things that you can't ever forget, because like, there's only so many unique storylines, and that game was such a whirlwind of, oh my God, they're back. Oh no, they are dead. Like, it's never been that fast of a pendulum swing all in one game. But that Stars game was one of the quickest. Oh, they're so back. Oh wait, no, they're so dead. They've never been more dead in their life in one 60-minute fell swoop than against that Stars team.
Look, I struggle to find excitement in the rest of this season. You know, nobody's really in award contention. The playoffs are a long shot. I shouldn't say a long shot. I'll say they're unlikely.
They're 3 points out.
They're 3 points out. They probably need to win 19 of their final 28 games, which isn't a crazy ask, but for this Rangers team, it probably is a bit of a crazy ask.
Right.
The trades will tell you all you need to know because, and I think this is the last thing I really want to hit on before we get out of here. At this point, it's hard not to look at this as the GM's making decisions for his job based on the JT Miller trade, because like objectively, they didn't give up a lot. They brought in a good player.
Yeah.
We all know the back half of this contract is why the Canucks were willing to do this right now. It's why they wanted to get rid of him and why they wanted the flexibility. You know, they instantly went out and they made another trade. They brought in a player and spent the money they were saving almost instantly. And the Rangers are old. Their 5 best forwards, their 5 most expensive forwards are all on the other side of 30. Their next highest paid forward is Lafreniere, who is maybe going to finish with 50 some odd points this year, which isn't a great
Hasn't been
endorsement.
good this year.
He hasn't been good. Your 2 best solutions are maybe Gabriel Perreault declares and comes out this spring and he gets a moonlight 5-6 regular season games before you watch the playoffs on the couch. Or it's Brendan Othmann, who really got did dirty by that injury. You know, if he didn't get hurt earlier in the season down in Hartford, he would have probably got a good 30-game run to see what he was at the NHL level. We'll probably see him down the backstretch of the regular season at some point as well. But like, I don't see a world where, barring something dramatic, you're going to feel great about this team come September 15th in the fall with the first day of training camp. You know, they need a lingering replacement. They need at least two forwards. They need a backup goalie, and everybody else is just going to be a year older. You know, it's really hard to feel particularly excited. And look, I know there are going to be people who are doing Eichel, McDavid, Brady Tkachuk, all that's great. But like, until that person is getting off a plane at Teterboro, off a private jet, walking to a helicopter, I'm not going to be banking on that. You know, I'm not banking on McDavid or Eichel or Brady Tkachuk. And look, real quick on Brady Tkachuk. I like Brady Tkachuk. I think he's a good player. He's probably a top 30, 40 player in the NHL. He is not as good as his brother, and he is not the difference between the Rangers being Stanley Cup good and what they are right now. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. You know, 80, 90 points, but he very well might be the old Bill Simmons, the good player, bad team. You know, we'll see if he ever gets to be on a good team. As far as, I was going to make the comparison of like Garnett before the Celtics or Cat before he got to the Knicks, but like, that's kind of what it feels like right now. We're like, if he's as good and as important as he's being portrayed to be on Team USA, how come the Senators can't be in the playoff race? You know, like that's what's
if Brady Tkachuk is the best leader in the, you know, like a true leader and a true difference maker, okay, then why have the Senators been miserably bad?
I'm not even saying make the playoffs. I'm just saying in the playoff race. You know?
And it's, you know, it's tough because, you know,
it's a team sport.
It is a team, right? It's a team sport, and you can't blame one person on you know, constant failure or constant success for that matter. But if Brady Tkachuk is as incredible both on the ice and off the ice as a lot of people make him out to be, well, then why have you lost a million games in the past few years? Like, surely you could directly contribute to at least a couple more wins a season, right?
And that's what I'll end on is, and that shows you the limitations of certain types of conversation. Like, objectively, was it fun that the game started with 3 fights and the big hit, the McAvoy hit on McDavid? Was that great? Yeah. Did it maybe give them a little more juice? Yeah. Was that the difference between winning and losing? The difference between winning and losing was the 2 Jake Gensel goals. Like, is it fun? Is it exciting? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it materially changing the conditions of the game? Maybe. And let's be fair, Matthew Tkachuk is too good of a player to be sitting in the penalty box for 5 minutes. That's ultimately my biggest gripe about that is like, I love the effort. I appreciate it. Like, there's a reason the Rangers had Matt Rempe to do this. Like if he sits for 5 minutes, it doesn't particularly matter all that much. You know, if JT Miller starts fighting all the time, that's going to be an issue because he's their best forward right now. You know, it's a good idea at times, but like there's a reason Brandon Hagel was like, it's cool they did that for the cameras, but like we're just trying to win the game. Like there's a very real facetiousness to that. Like remember that game against the Devils this season where after every single whistle they tried to have a scrum and there were 2 or 3 fights in that game. Like Trocheck got in the fight and Rempe fought, and people see through that. Canada very much is like, oh, they're trying to be cool for TV. And look, USA won the game. It's very hard to beat the same team twice, especially in this shorter span. I'm very excited for the game. I expect it to be a coin flip or better game. I hope America wins.
Sure.
I am doubtful America beats Canada twice in a week and a half, just because that's the way sports work. It's not like they're doomed. It's you're playing a really good team that's pissed off, and they're getting Cale Makar back, who didn't play in the last game.
I will be finishing work at around 7 p.m. and then I will be heading straight to a bar to watch this game. It's going to be great. And the thing too is like the thing about these fights really quickly is, you know, and I'll show this comment from Frank Herndon on YouTube who said you say you want to send a message. Yeah, that's that's fine. That's valid. I think everything here can be true. One, Team USA want to send a message. Yeah. 2, the fights were fun and entertaining for the fans. True. They were, something that the players wanted to do. They wanted to show their emotion. They wanted to show not only that, they were passionate about the game, but that they were taking it seriously. Right. And, they wanted to pump up the rest of the team. All of that can be true. At the end of the day, though, the reason that Team USA beat Team Canada last week was because Team USA scored more goals. All of these things can be true, by the way.
Yeah. They all played really well. And like, that was, I think, the funniest part about watching the pregame before the USA-Sweden game last night was Bissonnette saying, well, people don't realize how good a tournament Jack Eichel's having, how good a tournament he's having. You just spent 45 minutes talking about 3 fights and asking Drew Doughty, are you going to fight Matthew Tkachuk on Thursday? Bro, you're on TV. If you want to talk about Jack Eichel's defense, you can do that. Like, you're literally, it's like when Biden would tweet, who's the president? I'd like to have a word with him. My brother, you can do it. You're literally on the panel. You can say, hey, I want to talk about Jack Eichel's defense because he's been the best forward on this team. I know he doesn't have the counting stats, but Eichel's been the best forward on this team. I can't wait for Thursday.
It's going to be great. I mean, you should come. I mean, come to the bar with me. We haven't done bar like we could. You know what? Screw. We could do a live show from there. How about that?
Probably after the game.
after the game? Yeah. All right. We could do a show after the game. Why not?
After the game. All right. We will talk to you guys probably early next week, barring some Rangers news, which very well could happen between now and then. But we'll talk to you guys on Monday of next week. See you guys then. If you could be so kind, just subscribe wherever you're watching or listening.